Hey guys, I'm Heidi Prieb. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if this is your first time here. This month on this channel, we've been talking about intimacy. So, how to maintain and create intimate connections with friends, family members, loved ones, romantic partners. And today we're going to be talking about something that I believe has a significant impact on whether or not we're able to maintain healthy, intimate connections. And what that thing is our ability to metabolize emotional pain. So, what I mean when I say the word metabolize is essentially being present with our emotional pain. So, rather than pushing it away, can we actually sit with it and find ways to integrate it into our lives? And the better we are at doing this, the better we are also going to be at staying in healthy, intimate connection. Because in order to stay in healthy, intimate connection, we need to have the whole of ourselves online and available to us. And the whole of who we are includes all of the pain of the past, and all of the pain of the present, and all of the pain that eventually the future will bring into our lives. But quite a few of us, particularly those who grew up insecurely attached, have really big blocks around healthily processing emotional pain. And there's absolutely no judgment here. For about 25 years of my life, I avoided emotional pain like it was the plague. It was my full-time job to never experience or sit with emotional pain. And it created nothing but more problems in my life the longer I did that. So, what we're going to talk about today is how to not get stuck in that trap. Because very often, when we do get stuck in that trap of avoiding pain, the pain comes out anyway. But we often end up unconsciously or accidentally offloading the pain onto the people who are closest to us. So, today we're going to talk about how to avoid that trap. For the first part of this video, we're going to look at what happens when we don't know how to metabolize and be present with pain. And then in the second half of the video, we're going to talk about how to start an upward spiral where we are able to integrate the lessons that are often incredibly important that pain is there to teach us. So I want to base the entire premise of this video on this quote by John Green that says, "The thing about pain is that it demands to be felt." So this is a line from the fiction book, The Fault in Our Stars, but I think that it is pointing directly at the heart of a very deep truth, which is that when emotional pain comes into our lives, we do not have the option to not experience it. The only options we get are whether we are going to deal with it consciously or unconsciously. Often when we deal with it unconsciously, we end up accidentally subjecting all of the people around us to completely unnecessary pain, rather than dealing with it consciously and intentionally in a way that actually enriches our ability to be present and there for the people in our lives. So we're going to start off by looking at what it looks like when we can't do that conscious processing because we have not been shown a model for it. So we're going through life and a moment of pain arises, right? This could be something very significant. It could be something like a loss or a betrayal or a death. So something that really dysregulates our system. Or it could be something smaller. It could be an ego bruise. It could be a jab to our self-esteem. It could be essentially anything that comes in and dysregulates our system in a way that we find incredibly unpleasant. And our options in this moment are to either stay present with the pain, which we're often only able to do if we have learned how to do that through example or through intentionally cultivating the skills that we're going to talk about today, or our bodies become overwhelmed and go immediately into avoidance tactics around the pain. Now, this is not the same as attachment avoidance, though it can overlap with it. So we're going to make another distinction here. We can avoid the pain either through repressing the pain. So this is what happens when something comes into our system and our system decides this is too much for me. I can't deal with it. I'm going to block it out of our conscious awareness and tell myself this is fine. It doesn't hurt me. Make up some story about why the pain doesn't matter and move on with things. Or we can go into externalizing. When we're externalizing our pain, we're aware that it's there. We're aware that we don't feel quite right, but we don't feel as though we ourselves are capable of dealing with the pain. So we project it onto some other person or some other situation, and we try to work it out externally instead of internally. And we can either become dependent on other people to caretake us emotionally. So we're going to go out into the world looking for a savior because unconsciously we believe that if we find that savior, we can bypass ever feeling the pain. Or we're going to go out into the world and look for someone to project that pain onto so that we are working it out interpersonally through fighting and arguing and blaming another person for our pain, rather than, once again, being able to sit with it. And on the other side of things, when we are repressing our pain, this can cause two very distinct problems in intimate relationships. One is that anywhere we have pain, that we have told ourselves we do not have pain, or that it doesn't matter to us that something bad happened to us, we are going to be completely intolerant and unempathetic with other people who are experiencing that same pain in their lives. So when we get into close relationships, if we are people who have walled ourselves off from feeling and giving ourselves empathy around the pain that we have experienced in life, we're also going to be walled off from giving other people that empathy. And so now the other person who is coming to us for support and co-regulation is going to be the one who is processing our pain on our behalf when they get shut out in those moments. Alternately, we might displace our pain onto someone else. So find another person who looks like they are in pain in a similar way to how we have once been in pain, and become incredibly over-involved in trying to fix their pain. Because we tell ourselves unconsciously, if I can resolve this inside of this other person where it feels safer to approach it, then I don't have to deal with my own. I will have fixed this pain through someone else. So rather than looking for a savior, we try to become one for other people. And all of these options, projection, dependence, getting over-involved in someone's pain, denying other people's pain, all of these end up putting the pain that we could not metabolize and process ourselves onto someone else. They do it in different ways, but at the end of the day, pain demands to be felt, and so it gets felt. But it gets felt by the people around us, not just us. So what we're going to talk about next is how to make sure that we are not making this happen, that we are not avoiding our pain and unintentionally offloading it onto other people. And the people we tend to offload it onto the most significantly are our intimates. So our close friends, our partners, our family members, the people who we are least afraid will leave us if we expose them to our pain. But this massively gets in the way of intimacy. It creates conflicts in our relationships that don't need to be there, and it also robs the people in our lives of the chance to really know us. Because a big part of who we are is that pain. Everything that happens to us in life lives inside of us. So if we have shoved something away into a dark corner that we don't go into anymore, we are robbing the people we're close to of the opportunity to truly know us. And we're robbing ourselves of the exact same thing. So we're unable to develop that self-intimacy when we have unmetabolized pain. We don't really know on a deep level who we are or what we have to offer the world if there's areas of our psyche that we absolutely cannot and will not travel into. So how do we start doing a different thing? How do we learn in that moment of pain, first through intentional practice, and then later on it might come more naturally, to stay present with our pain instead of disconnecting from it? The first step is accepting that core premise on a deep level. So getting real with yourself when something upsetting happens in life, when grief arises, when loss or betrayal or heartache arises, and going, this pain is going to get felt. It does not matter if I avoid it. It does not matter if I deny it. It will come out. But I can recognize that I have a choice in this moment about how it comes out. I can take the reins on my own experience of pain and choose to move through it in a way that is best for both myself and everybody around me. And so the first step in this process is consciously making room for pain. So in that moment where something goes wrong, where something goes off the rails in our lives, where something unexpectedly bad happens. We have the opportunity in that moment to welcome the pain in and ask it what it needs from us. And what that means is making tangible accommodations in our lives for pain and grief. So, the last time something really unexpected and surprising and terrible happened in my life, I remember meditating on the question, how long does this grief want to be with me? And the answer that kind of intuitively came to me was 6 months. Something inside my body went, I think I'm going to be wrestling with this for about 6 months. And the next question that I asked myself was, how can I be as intentional as possible when it comes to making room for grief inside of my life over the next 6 months? So, how do I make sure that I have regular checkpoints where I know that I will be taking time specifically to attend to my own pain? Because if I do not do that, if I do not use the actual tangible resources that I have to attend to this grief, which are things like time, money, energy, I will end up spending all of those things on the grief unintentionally. It will leak out of me in unconscious ways. So, to start thinking about what you might need in order to metabolize pain, think about what a child would need in your situation. So, if a child experienced something like the loss of someone they loved, whether it's to death or to divorce or to some other circumstance, what would you want to do to help that child move through this process so that it does not become a trauma for them? What children often need is protection, structure, and comfort. So they need their pain to be seen. They need to know it's okay that it's there. They need a degree of leniency. So they need to understand that it's okay if we put a little bit of a pause button on some areas of our lives in order to feel and be present with this pain. And it's also okay to make plans and keep life moving in the background as we're moving through grief. And there's no one formula for this because what we need in order to metabolize pain is going to be totally different person to person. But you might want to pay attention to the fact that if you are not securely attached, you might need resources that you've never had in order to learn to metabolize pain. So you might need to seek out the help of a counselor or a therapist or a support group, or you might need to pick up some books on how to move through difficult periods of our lives. So I want to note that this is not necessarily going to be easy. You might have to go on an exploration journey of figuring out how and in what ways you're able to integrate pain into your life and to welcome it in. Maybe it looks like you going, okay, I'm going to allow pain to disrupt my plans a bit. I'm going to take some time off work, or I'm going to spend some money on going to a coach or a therapist, or I'm going to go around asking everybody I can think of, hey, have you ever been through an experience like this? And what would you recommend I do in order to help myself through this experience? Which is different than asking them to take away your pain, right? You're asking them for advice on how to stay more connected to it. Again, this stuff does not come intuitively to all of us, but the process of going out and seeking that resource for yourself is giving your inner child an incredibly strong message, which is that I am going to protect you from this. I'm going to comfort you around this. I'm going to find a way to make this pain make sense to us so that it does not become a trauma that we are perpetuating onto other people. I am raising you to be a better person than that. So we need to change our mindset here to really understand what it means to be present with something. When we love something, what we naturally do is place our focused attention on it. And in order to metabolize our pain, as strange as this is going to sound, we have to love it. We have to be willing to spend time with it, to believe that it matters and deserves our attention, and we have to be willing to consciously and intentionally place our attention on it. And what's super interesting is that often we find when we go into the pain and we actually stay with it, it is much less scary than all of the meta feelings that we have around pain. So a meta feeling is a feeling that we have about another feeling. And quite a few of us, especially those of us who err towards the repression of emotional pain, often have a sense of panic and fear come up when we feel pain. And that sense of panic and fear, like something terrible is going to happen if I go into this pain, is often actually a lot more psychologically painful than the pain itself. So when I think about going to the heart of emotional pain, I have this memory I always return to of this hiking trip that I took one time where I was doing a multi-week solo trip. And at one point, I ended up tripping over something and twisting my knee in a way that I knew was going to need medical attention. It wasn't broken, but it was in a lot of pain. So I was hiking over this hill, and there was a village on the other side of the hill that I knew I could go into to get medical attention. But in order to get there, I had to descend a very steep incline. And it didn't matter how careful I was with my steps, every single time that I had to put weight on that knee, it was excruciatingly painful. And so what I did was I turned on my phone and I started listening to an audiobook by Pema Chodron. I believe this one was The Places That Scare You, but in any case, I will link her audiobooks in the description of this video because they are phenomenal. And in the book, it was talking about staying present with all emotions. And a tactic she recommended was just naming what's present for us in our experience when it comes up. And so every time I stepped on that leg, I would go pain. And then I would step again and go pain. And then I would step again and go, oh my God, pain. And one of the coolest things that has ever happened to me in that moment on that hike, which is that the more I screamed pain inside of my head and at some points out loud, the more my pain started to evaporate. But it wasn't so much that the pain itself was evaporating. It was that all of the anxiety and stress that I felt around the pain seemed to be floating away the more that I acknowledged it. And I realized that physical pain, while it's deeply uncomfortable, is not always quite as bad as the feelings that we have about our physical pain. By simply acknowledging to myself very intentionally that I was in pain, it was like it boiled the experience down to only the pain, as opposed to all of the things surrounding it. And this is still a tactic that I use to this day anytime I am in emotional pain. I stop and I go, pain, pain, pain. And I let myself name it over and over again. Or maybe grief, loss, panic, anxiety. Just simply being willing to name and welcome pain into our awareness is a massive first step towards being able to stay present with it. Because we actually get to the core of what it is, and we allow all of the meta feelings around it, which can come in and jumble up our experience of pain like no other, to get out of the way and allow us to access the pain directly. So, the last time I went through something that was causing me an extreme amount of distress, so this thing that told me it was going to take 6 months, I decided to start making dates with my pain. So I went out and bought this really beautiful journal, and then every evening before I went to sleep, I would write down, this is what the pain looks like today. And then I would draw whatever picture felt like it best represented my inner world at that moment. Some days pain felt like being lost in a foggy forest, and other days it felt like being tossed around in the ocean. And other days, it felt like finding a temporary clearing inside of that forest, or seeing a little bit of sun breaking through the clouds. And what was really interesting is that the more I paid attention to my pain, the more I carved out time and energy to focus on it specifically, the more I found that my pain was starting to tell me a story back to me. So when I flipped through the pages of this book, I was learning things about myself and about the world and about different perspectives that pain gives us that I could not have arrived at had I not spent time listening to the pain. And this is exactly what it means to meet ourselves deeply. When we are willing to go into even the most uncomfortable experiences that we're having, what we find is new self-resource inside of there. So there is a spiritual teacher named Tara Brach, who you may have already heard of if you follow my channel, but she has incredible philosophies around radical acceptance. So accepting and welcoming into our experience whatever is happening for us. and she's someone who has been really instrumental in my ability to stay present with pain, and not just stay present with it, but assume that it has something to teach me. To assume that whatever I'm currently experiencing is the most important thing that I could possibly be present with. So Tara Brach tells this story that I really love about these two monks who are climbing up a mountain, and one of the monks gets injured, and the other one has to decide whether he's going to summit the mountain or stay with this other monk in his pain. And the monk decides to stay. And the moral of the story is that the summit of our experience lies inside of whatever we choose to be present with. So often, when we look at life as this series of kind of goals that we want to reach or things we want to achieve, what we're really telling ourselves is, I will be present in my life once I get there. And there are times where this is okay. But there are also times where it helps us to stop and acknowledge it's time for me to let go of that imaginal reality I'd created that I promised myself I would be present in. And it's time for me to attend to this moment. Because this moment, however unexpected and however painful, is the most important experience I could possibly be having. Because it's the one that is happening. So anytime we have something highly dysregulating that comes into our awareness, anger, pain, fear, grief, stress, it is already too late to avoid that thing. If it has shown up, it is now the summit of your experience, and you are never going to find that other summit through avoiding this one. You have to stop and be willing to go through it. So this means developing a sense of intimacy with your own pain and listening really closely to what lessons might be there for you to glean from it. We thought reality was going to be one way, now it's another way. Okay, what can we learn from that? What can we learn about ourselves from that? What can we learn about the world from that? In what ways is the experience of this pain allowing us a deeper form of connection to ourselves, ergo, other people? Because guess what? Everybody on earth has experienced deep pain. And often we have this fear that feeling pain, that going through something challenging is going to cause us disconnection from other people. When in reality, this is one of the deepest and truest things that it's possible for human beings to connect on. Currently, in this exact moment, there are millions of people out there experiencing deep pain all simultaneously. And so many of them probably think that they're alone in it, when in reality, they are tapped into something completely universal and completely human. So as terrible as it feels to bear pain in the moment that we're experiencing it, to allow ourselves to grieve and cry and rage sometimes, and feel how completely unjust the universe is, if we can allow ourselves to stay on the page with all of that and to make friends with our own pain. Now, we're going to be contributing to building something inside of us that allows us to access compassion and empathy rather than avoidance and offloading when we encounter pain again. And this is how slowly the world becomes a better place, when we stop externalizing our pain and learn to integrate it so that the cycle of pain ends with us. Now, this doesn't mean that we don't set boundaries. It doesn't mean that we don't get really angry sometimes, but it means that we stop trying to get other people to take our pain away. Because when it shows up, we metabolize it, we feel it, we learn from it, and then we go back into the world and we set our new boundaries and we choose our new paths accordingly. So this leads us to the final step in the process, which is about reconnecting to hope. When we avoid pain, what we are accidentally doing is staying connected to a form of hope that no longer exists in reality. We are keeping this mental image of something that was once wonderful and available to us present in our minds by refusing to process the loss, and by virtue of doing that, we are avoiding the truth of the present moment. The truth of the present moment is that as soon as pain or grief has arisen for us, it is already there. We cannot fix it through having an argument. We cannot fix it through avoiding the problem. We cannot fix it through shoving it away in a dark corner of our psyches and going to find something else in the world that takes the conscious experience of pain out of our awareness temporarily. As soon as something in our lives has died or caused us grief or pain, it already exists. Reality is already changed forever. And what we are doing when we sit with that pain is we are laying to rest what we thought reality was going to look like. We are being present in that summit of our moment-to-moment experience with what reality actually looks like in this moment. And the cool thing about that is that it allows us to let go of what's already gone, and it frees us up to re-engage with the new types of hope and possibility and opportunity that do exist within the present. There are times when hope is going to come and naturally arise inside of us, and there are other times when we need to go after hope with a club. I implore us all, after we have done this process of sitting with our pain, giving ourselves the time we need to attend to it and to move through it, to then make an intentional practice out of engaging fully and proactively with finding new things to hope for. So I kind of see this as the process of uninstalling an old program that we had running internally around what we were hoping for in life, and then reinstalling hope, but with a different program. So hope is going to look different now that you've gone through this process. You're going to have different things to work towards and to feel impassioned by. This is how we become version 2.0 of ourselves after we go through pain. We don't have to end up these empty shells of people who are running away eternally from that which we are afraid of. We don't have to become people who live in the past. We can become people who move through the darkest moments of our lives with our eyes open, who learn and integrate what those moments and those experiences have to teach us. And then we take everything that we learn inside of that pit of despair and we bring it out into the world. We find new people to engage with who understand what we've been through, who we can now connect with in a deeper way. We find new opportunities for ourselves and ways to make sense of the experiences that we've had and potentially contribute in better ways to the world by virtue of having gone through them. We look for new opportunities that would be more fitting for the person we are now, because pain changes us. The only choice that we get is how it changes us. Does it change us into a bitter person who is holding on to an idea of the past that is already long gone? Or does it change us into a stronger, more integrated, more centered person who has better discernment and makes wiser choices for themselves, and is also able to empathize with the people around them more deeply? This option is an upwards spiral. And the cool thing is that we can choose it at any point in time. We can choose to go back and attend to past pains with this degree of presence and intention. We can choose it the next time pain arises for us, and it will. And the more we stay open to this process, the more the people around us are able to witness what it actually looks like to confront and integrate pain. And that ends up serving as a much better template for how to do it than us trying to savior them from their pain ever would. So this creates a net positive result in both your intimate relationships and your experience of life as a whole. All right, I think I'm going to leave it there for today on the topic of metabolizing pain. Let me know in the comments any thoughts, feelings, perspectives you have coming up as you move through this. As always, I love you guys. I hope you're taking care of yourselves and each other, and I will see you back here again really soon.